Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Connecting with Kim here on Tampa Bay Arts and Education Network. I'm your host, Kim Droege. You could also catch the audio of our show on Sun Radio, 96.3 FM, and on your favorite streaming platform Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3:30 in the afternoon. So I want to give a shout out to my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay, who has been providing safe spaces and empowering services for survivors of domestic violence and their children. And they do a great job. They're going to have a lot of good things happening in their world this year, and we're going to explore that in a later show this season. So you please visit the thrift store on North Willow here in Tampa and support their efforts, because the net proceeds from the store support their mission, and it's an important one and a necessary one, unfortunately, in our society. So I am so thrilled because I've been trying to get this gentleman on my show for quite some time, and we finally had our schedules match because he's very much in demand. And when I think of veterans issues, I first think of my friend Bill Hodges, who hosts Veterans Corner Radio, which is on Sun Radio also, but it's also an international podcast. And then the second person I think of is the person who's joining me today in the chair, DJ Reyes. Welcome to Connecting with Kim.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks for inviting me on your show.
It was my pleasure. Our friend Alicia Whiting-Bosich, she's a lawyer here in town, really great girl. She was the first one who came to me and said, I knew about you, of course, because you're all over social media, but she came to me and said, you should have DJ on your show. And she sent me all your information right away. And so that literally has been over a year since that happened. We've been trying to get together. So DJ, I know you're retired Army, a colonel, and you have so many things behind your name that I couldn't even list them all. So everyone knows that comes to my show that you get the time at the top of the show to share your life journey, and that will bring us to all the things we're going to talk about today. So take it away.
Sure. Well, thanks for this opportunity and to speak into your audience. So one of the things I'm very proud of is that I'm a son of a retired Army officer. My dad served 26 years. He was a Korea War and Vietnam War combat veteran. Both my parents were originally from Hawaii, where all my family basically is from. But in 1950, my dad joined the Army because he wanted a better way of life than pulling pineapples out of the fields. What they didn't tell him was that if he joined the Army, they were going to send him to the Korean Peninsula. So that's how he started off his 26-year career in the Korean War, and then he retired 26 years later. So as a military brat or military dependent, I traveled all over the United States and in Europe. And I already knew at that point, I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to do growing up, but I knew I was going to serve. I knew I was going to come in the military. And I'm really, for a lot of reasons, I'm glad I did. And I myself served over 33 years active duty. And 10 years ago, I retired out of U.S. Special Operations Command, my last parent unit, before I went to Afghanistan for my last tour. And I settled here with my lovely bride, Julie, and my kids. And that's the second thing I'm proud of, because now my kids are 17 years old and they're triplets.
Oh my gosh!
So they were born in England when I was a brigade commander in RAF Molesworth. And so we have quite the journey. But after I retired, I did a couple of things on the base. I worked actually as an NSA advisor for then Admiral McCraven, the commander of U.S. Special Operations Command. And then I got away from government service totally. But I wanted to stay connected with veterans in the military and advocacy, and things just happened, and before you know it, which is another story, but I got involved in the standing up of the Veterans Treatment Court here in Tampa, and we just recently celebrated our 10-year anniversary. So that has, in short order, that has given me and others a platform at the state and the national level to address a myriad of veteran issues that are impacting on veterans and their families nationwide.
Well, you know, I am so glad that you shared, because I've known you for a while, but I'm so glad you shared that life journey because, first of all, you know, my daddy was also a veteran of Korea, and unfortunately he's passed away and is buried at Sarasota National. And I'm the only girl on both sides of my family, so all my male cousins have served. And my uncle was an Air Force veteran. And so veterans issues and service to our country run deep in my family, I'm proud to say. So let's start off with how I really kind of first spent some time with you and that's Veterans Treatment Court. And some of you watch Connecting with Kim regularly will remember that we had Judge Shanti on the show last season to talk about Veterans Treatment Court, because he is the presiding justice for Veterans Treatment Court. So let's talk a little bit about what Veterans Treatment Court is and does before we move on to other topics, because you do a lot of veterans things.
Right. So I'll speak from the perspective of a volunteer veteran mentor, which is an important voluntary piece, but an important piece to the Veterans Treatment Court. And I know for your viewing audience that watched the great interview you did with our current VTC Judge Shante, he basically explained it from the legal, from the jurisdictional perspective. From my perspective, my understanding, having done this now for 10 years, it's a problem-solving court. So although it's set in the criminal court setting, I really love the idea of it being about treatment. And because we as a nation realize that we continue to send our men and women off to conflict to defend our great nation. And I can tell you for a fact, as a former soldier, that when you deploy in a theater of combat, they do a pretty good job of checking you out mentally, physically, physiologically, and all of that. They make sure you're fit to fight. And so you deploy. And when you come back, most of us are very fortunate, and we come back for the most part okay, and we resume our regular lives. But there are a percentage of military men and women that come out that don't cope so well, that are either physically injured or psychologically injured. We have the moral wounds of war. And so because of that, what we have found trend-wise with VA studies is that there is a connection or a nexus at times between one's criminal behavior and activity and what possibly happened to them while in the service or in combat. And so because of that arose this great court back in 2008, first stood up in Buffalo, New York, by the Honorable Robert Russell. And basically what it is, hey, let's identify from these veterans who get in trouble with the law based on criminal offenses that are qualified under that respective state's statute for admission into the Veterans Treatment Court. Let's see if we can get them the treatment and the wellness and the therapies that they need. And so it's an alternative in many cases, a diversionary court in many cases, to regular criminal court. And so if that veteran is eligible and admissible into the court, and there's a process for that, then they come into the court, in this case the Tampa Veterans Treatment Court, and they go through this very regimented 5-phase program administered by the judge, overseen by the judge. But what's beautiful about the program is it's a team effort. So not only is it the judge and the attorneys, but you have probation, you have the Veterans Affairs involved for the medical, you've got the community resources, and then of course you have the volunteer veteran mentors assigned to that veteran to help encourage them, help facilitate services, and to cheer them on as their biggest cheerleader as they get through the program.
I had the honor and the privilege, I was invited by Judge Shanti to attend Veterans Treatment Court. And actually, anybody out there can attend Veterans Treatment Court. You just go to the George Edgecombe Courthouse, take the annex across, it's on the 5th floor, and you can sit there and experience what I did that day for Veterans Treatment Court. And there's a schedule, which you can find online, so you will know. Judge Shanti sent me the schedule and then asked me to come on a Friday, because that's usually graduation day. And what I mean by that is that veterans who have successfully completed the program in total, from the time that they were charged to the time that they were admitted to the program and to graduation. It happens on Friday, and I was so happy I witnessed it because I was there on a Friday and someone graduated the program. And so you get to see the whole process from beginning to end. And DJ, it is a team effort. I mean, it's incredible how many people were in that room supporting that veteran.
Absolutely, and we take pride in that. Everybody takes ownership, and we have a couple sayings in the Veterans Treatment Court. Of course, our number one saying is "Leave no veteran behind."
Right.
And to many of those who have served, they understand, especially those who have deployed, what it's like to be out deployed and on the battlefield. And we never leave any man or woman behind on the battlefield. And so philosophically, we say the same thing here. Now the battlefield is here. It's back on our own shores. It's in our neighborhoods. It's in our own families. So you have to look at it from that perspective and frame it that way correctly so that these veterans who do need help, we rally behind them to make sure that they get the help and the support that they need so we don't leave them behind.
So take a few minutes now because you mentioned the mentor program, and I know you're going to talk about it at the end of the show, but just explain the mentor program because it's an extremely important program.
Exactly. So to go back a little bit on background with the Buffalo, New York program, that's really the genesis of it. And and I know the mentors there because I keep in touch with the senior mentors in Buffalo, New York. But the way it was described was that they had a couple of Vietnam War combat veterans that were just sitting in the back of the courtroom watching what was going on with these veterans that were going before Judge Russell. Mm-hmm. They realized, wait a minute, there's something's not right here. And so one of them volunteered, raised his hand to the judge and said, Judge, if you don't mind, here's who I am. I'll introduce myself. I'm a Marine. I'm a combat veteran. I'm wounded, Purple Heart recipient. That's a veteran. If you don't mind, I'd like to take him outside and just talk to him. Now, prior to that, when this veteran went before the judge, his appearance was slovenly. He was slumped over. He was muttering. It was hard to understand what he was saying. Clearly had some mental attitude issues. Mm-hmm. After the judge agreed, they went out for 15 minutes. He came back in. It was like a transformational change. The defendant came in. He was standing dress right dress, like at attention. It was yes or no, sir. He was standing at what we call the position of parade rest with his almost a semi-position of attention with his hands clasped behind his back. All signs of being back in the military again. And the judge then said to that person, soon to be the mentor, he said, what did you do that brought about this change with the veteran? And he said, it was simple, Your Honor. I just asked some questions about him and his service to the country and where he was and the injuries that he sustained and his issues and challenges. And then I told him, you're still in the military. You still have that in you, okay? You just got to get through this and get through it with the judge who's on your side. He said, and we're going to do this, but you have to show respect to the judge, just like you did to your superior officer when you were in the military. And all of a sudden, it clicked in his head. I remembered that when he told me that. And that's kind of a theme, too, in our Tampa Veterans Treatment Court. When we talk to our veterans, we tell them, look, I am in civilian clothes. The judge is in a robe. But all of us are either retired officers or senior NCOs. The judge is still serving as a colonel in the United States Army Reserve.
Exactly.
I said, you are in a military court, and you will find a no friendlier court with people that understand you than this court alone. So work with us, and we'll work with you. But as Judge Shante always likes to say, you got to want it just a little bit more than we want it for you. So because of that, we realized this mentor program, which we have since built into a quite mature organization, is the secret sauce.
It is the secret sauce. I saw it in action. I mean, first of all, the public defenders are on the side of the veteran. The lawyers that are practicing in the court are on the side of the veterans. The judge, in a compassionate, caring, but not, in a little bit of strict way, is on the side of the veteran. So everybody in that room is on the side of the veteran and helping this person navigate this process and come through it successfully and become a whole person again. This is probably a good time before reintroduce you as my guest. If you're just joining me, I'm connecting with Kim. My guest in the chair today is DJ Reyes, and he is what, when I think of veterans, I think of him. Veterans and veterans issues. But anyway, everybody in that court, and when the veteran goes up to engage with the judge, everybody is lined up with the veteran. And then you have the people sitting there. I don't know what we call that area, like the docket, or they're going to say they're people who are going to either engage in the program, who've been charged and are there to observe, and they are going to see what goes on to see if they want to become a member of this program, right? Right,
absolutely. And the judges, to your earlier point about this court, the judges always says, this is not his court, this is the people's court.
People's court.
This is our society's court. It's public. he encourages people to come and visit. In fact, and you know this, prior to the 9 o'clock showing, when we start 9 o'clock on the dot, at 8 o'clock we have a pre-VTC huddle in the back with the mentors and with the judge. And at that point, if we have guests that express an interest to attend, we always encourage them to attend our staff meeting, because that's a chance where they get to see how the sausage is made. They get to see the interaction, the personal interaction between the mentors and the judge. And the judge loves to see guests, because that's all, as I do as well, because it's all about furthering education, advocacy, and information, and allaying any kind of misperceptions about the court, or what are veterans, what are they doing in this type of court, and what's actually happening. A lot of those issues are, and questions are answered, if you will, coming through the staff meeting.
Now, I had the privilege and honor of attending your 10-year anniversary. How many mentors are in the program now?
Well, first let me back off by saying, when we started in the inception of 2013, we started with an army of one, which was me, and I started with the first VTC judge, the Honorable Richard Weiss. And before I forget, he then turned the reins over to Judge Greg Holder, and then finally Greg Holder turned it over to our current judge, Michael Shante. And I would be remiss if I didn't say, of the 3 VTC judges, I've actually served in Iraq in different units, but in Iraq with both Judge Weiss and Judge Shante.
Amazing.
So that should tell you just how familial the court is and how personal it is. Yeah. But we started off with me, and I built it to a high of over 100 mentors, and that was at the height of 2019, and a lot of things were happening, to include legislation that I got involved in. Then COVID hit.
Yep.
And then everybody across the board, because I keep in touch with VTCs across the nation, everybody dropped in their dockets and in their mentors. And we dropped from over 100, we dropped to a low of around, I believe we hovered around 30 or so. And now we're building up again. And the last count I had, I believe we're around 60 or 65 mentors. We're still one of the, if not the largest mentor program in the nation, still.
Yeah.
So that's where we are right now, but we've had the lows, the highs, lows, and then the highs again.
Well, like I said, everybody, there's the world before COVID and the world after COVID, and they bear no resemblance to each other. Right. Yeah, everybody's rebuilding from in some way, shape, or form from that traumatic event that happened worldwide, not just us, but worldwide. So we would be remiss. I mean, I know Veterans Treatment Court and the mentor program is, so near and dear to your heart, and you're so involved. But you do a lot of other things, and I don't want the time to get away from us before we talk about, because you travel internationally, you travel nationally, you're an advocate, you're on committees. So please take a few moments to talk about that.
So the best way to really answer that is to say that, as I mentioned earlier in this interview, that the Veterans Treatment Court has given us a platform to address other veteran issues. And so for the 10 years that we've been in the program, from an anecdotal perspective, the 10 things I've noted as a Veteran Mentor Program Coordinator are that when a veteran comes into the court, he or she appears before Judge Shante and says, okay, I'm here to get well. But while I'm here, I just happen to have this rucksack on my back. Let me take my rucksack off and dump it in front of you. Here's all my other problems I have.
Right.
And unless I get these problems solved, I'm going to have a difficult time getting well again. The 5 major themes or areas that I've seen over the 10 years are low-cost affordable housing, viable employment, credible education, and by education I don't mean degrees necessarily, I mean licenses, certifications, things where you can get skill training so you can start working already, reliable transportation, private transportation, and food insecurity. And what I found is a toxic cocktail mix of any or all of these when a veteran appears before the court. So let me just take the first one, which is low-cost affordable housing. I have gotten involved in that at the national level, and I'm working with a company in Rochester, New York. And in fact, next week, the 23, 24, and 25 of January, I have to go to the Florida legislature and to the Florida Housing Finance Corporation, because we're working the monies piece to it, the budget piece, the tax credits for the affordable housing, because that's what this type of housing program falls under. I've been consulting with this company, and their strategic vision is to, they've already started it in Rochester called Warrior Salute Program, but what they're trying to do now is transport that into Florida and expand throughout the Sunshine State. So I've already traveled to several counties, identified several potential parcels of land for them to build their affordable housing. And what they're envisioning is with each parcel of land, and I've identified a couple in Hillsborough County, so we're still working it, but if we get it, they're looking at putting a 75 to 100 unit apartment complex.
Cool.
For veterans, veterans, married veterans, and veterans with families, and then aligned and tied to the Veterans Administration, the VA, in this case for Haley and Bay Pines. So because of that, I've been able to do that, and I'm really proud of that.
You should be proud of that, because it's one of the utmost problems in Florida right now is affordable housing.
Right, absolutely, and right, it beget the veteran challenge with housing. Really is a subset of the national housing shortage and the challenges that U.S. citizens are going through. The second area, which is more aligned on the judicial side, but has grown out as part of the platform of the VTC, is that I'm in the middle of coordination with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Middle District of Florida, the Chief Judge, and the Federal Defender with regards to the possibility of establishing a federal-level Veterans Treatment Court and mentor program, with hopefully the first one being here in Tampa. Now, I have to preface that by saying 2 years ago I was actually approached by a U.S. federal judge magistrate, Anthony Porcelli, to mentor a veteran, Army veteran, combat PTSD, who was brought up on federal charges. This was 2 years ago. I mentored him. We got him successfully through that. He was sentenced, but it was only on probation. And so because of that, we realized, hey, this thing's working. And so as of last week, the U.S. Federal District Court reached out to me again and said, we want you to mentor a second combat veteran.
Bravo. So
this is aligned with the initiative we have, and if we get this, then we'll probably be the first Veterans Treatment Court in the nation. Yay. So they'll pattern after us.
Love to hear it. So. You mentioned affordable housing, you mentioned food insecurity, licensing or education, you mentioned transportation, and employment.
Right.
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to understand when we're talking about Veteran Treatment Court, because this is something you learn when you attend it, and when you I spent some time in Judge Shanti's chambers, having him go into way more detail about the program. Is that, you know, not every veteran accepts the program. Not every veteran is accepted into the program. Not every veteran who starts the program completes it successfully in one try, okay? Sometimes they drop out. Sometimes they come back. Sometimes the judge doesn't approve of their behavior. I mean, there's all kinds of things that can happen. So I want you to understand this is a process, and everybody's a stakeholder, right? In some sense of the manner. But it's a tremendous thing that they're doing overall, and to have it at the federal level, you know, is amazing. So we only have a couple of minutes left, and so I promised you before we went on there that this is your camera. You can look into it and deliver any message to those watching and listening that you would like to. And
sure.
So take it away.
Sure. So I believe, as many of those of us who have served in uniform believe, there is no nobler profession than to serve your nation. And for many of us, just because you've taken off the uniform doesn't mean you take off service to the nation. And in this case, in the Veterans Treatment Court, it is service to our community, and more specifically to our brothers and sisters that have had a rough going and maybe need a hand up. Not a handout, but a hand up. And so because of that, we're always actively looking for our local area veterans or even active duty serving military. In the active component, the Guard or Reserve, if you're interested in learning more about this and becoming a volunteer veteran mentor, I can tell you it is very, very meaningful, and it is aligned to, for the military folks, it's aligned to your ethos. It's aligned to what you do in the service and looking out for each other and with each other and making sure you leave nobody behind. The website, if you're interested, and you can contact me, is www.hillsborocountymentors.org. That's one word. If you go right to that, you'll see our PSA video on there. 2.5-minute video, and then there's contact information on there. You can reach me and write directly to me, and I assure you I will write back to you.
I know you absolutely will. A veteran, so again, it's Hillsborough County.
www.hillsboroughcountymentors.org. Right.
So usually I try to give my folks listening, a heads up, go grab a pencil because you're going to want to remember this. But I always like to repeat it. So DJ, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show. I know what a busy man you are and how committed you are to all the areas that you serve, and so I'm so grateful you joined us today on Connecting with Kim, because this is really important, because as I said at the top of the show, all my family has been involved in the military. My father was a veteran. My father-in-law was a veteran. My father-in-law was in Pearl Harbor on his birthday that day, and he would never, ever talk about it with us, ever. He would never talk about his military service with us. So it does have a profound effect when you serve in the military, and particularly in combat. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It was my pleasure, totally. So if you're just joining us, my guest today on Connecting with Kim was DJ Reyes, and you'll just have to look. You'll have to listen to the show, watch the show. You can go to watch.tbae.net if you miss the show when it's broadcast on cable. But you need to watch this show. And you can also catch it many other places. Follow my social media on Instagram, Facebook, and X, so that you can find out all about the Connecting with Kim show, my guests, and all the broadcast details. You'll know all about what's happening on my show. So thank you for joining us today. Shout out again to my sponsor, the Spring of Tampa Bay, providing empowering services and safe spaces for survivors of domestic violence and their children. Join us again next week when we'll have another edition of Connecting with Kim. So long.